Welcome, everyone. I'm Laura DeFranco, the CEO of Brave Healer Productions, where we have a mission to wake the world up to what's possible for healing, one brave word at a time. And here today to help me with that mission is lead author of a new book that we have coming out called The Grief Experience: Tools for Acceptance, Resilience, and Connection. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. I'm so excited.
I know. I'm excited about this. And, I was joking with you earlier about having fun with an interview about grief, but we are going to have fun because we're kind of breaking up the rules about conversations about this. And I think it's one of the things I love the most. But you guys, let me just tell you a little bit about Kelly Daugherty. She's the owner of Greater Life Grief Counseling and Center for Informed Grief. She's a passionate authority on grief and loss with a focus on training, resources, and counseling. Kelly helps individuals navigate the challenges of grief. Her work promotes resilience, acceptance, and genuine connections in the face of loss. So, can you tell everyone a little bit about the why behind the book for you?
Absolutely. Well, grief is my passion. It is why I became a social worker. It has really been my mission in my life. My mom died when I was 14 years old. She died from breast cancer, and following that, I was a hot mess, like most teenagers after the death of their mom. And my dad recognized that and got me into a hospice grief group. And I met an amazing social worker there, Renee, who is really the reason I'm probably talking to you today. I walked into that room and finally didn't feel alone in my grief. Up until that point, I really struggled. I was really having a hard time because I didn't think that other people had experienced a loss like that. I didn't know any teens at my age that did have a parent die. And the reality is, 1 in 12 children will have a parent or a sibling die by the time they're 18 years old. But I think as teenagers, that's not something that's always shared. So maybe I did know people, but we didn't talk about it. So after I did some work with Renee and some family counseling with my dad, Renee asked me to start volunteering with the children's programs. And that's when I knew that this is what I wanted to do with my life. So one of my goals has always been to write a grief book. I've started multiple times. I have probably 10 different notebooks with some of it started. And then when Laura Mazzata with Holistic Mental Health reached out to me, that was my first opportunity to really get out there and write my story about my mom's death. And so that I think that's where I caught the excitement of it all and reached out to you a couple of times. I think we had a few calls, but I was just really nervous. But I knew that this is what needed to be shared with the world. And there's so many different grief stories that everybody experiences through their life. Grief is not just about death. It's about just a loss, right? And the feelings associated with a loss. And I just wanted to be able to put a book out there that whoever picks it up is going to be able to relate to at least one of the authors and their stories. And I'm beyond grateful that we have this amazing group of 25 authors and their vulnerable stories. And I can't wait for the readers to be able to read it because it's quite powerful and amazing, and I'm really proud of it.
Powerful and amazing. Don't do it justice, you guys. Okay, I'm going to back up just a minute because you kind of sped through a couple of really important things for me. And it was reading your scene with your dad. And honestly, it's like you had to trust your dad to say okay to going to the group therapy. Like, I don't know many kids that age that would have said okay to that. They would have just been like, no way, I'm not going, I'm not doing it. And they would have like, crawled away with their headphones and done something else, right? And kind of gone into the black hole pit of depression. So tell me more about that and and your dad and that relationship and like how that went down.
Well, my dad was the primary breadwinner for the family. My mom stayed home and took care of us. So my dad really wasn't all that involved growing up. And he also struggled with alcoholism through my childhood. And so once my mom died, it was pretty rough between the two of us. And but he knew enough that I did need help. And he also knew how to spin it enough because I went to an all girls Catholic high school in Long Island and I was boy crazy. And he told me there'd be boys at the grief group. And that is honestly the only reason I went.
There it is. There it is. I knew there was something. I'm like, how did she even end up in that room? And the thanks universe for putting you in that room and having it change your
Mhm.
life. And here we are today talking about this beautiful book that you're authoring. Like that's pretty amazing to me. There's a lot of things, but what's the most important thing you want people to know about the grief process?
It's unique for everybody. Everybody is going to grieve differently. Like I said, grief is the feelings associated with a loss. So it's not just death. And there's no specific timetable, there's no specific stages of grief. That's not accurate. Grief is it's what I always describe it as, it's a hot mess. There's, one of the models that I love so much is what's called the dual process model. And it talks about oscillating between loss oriented and restoration oriented, and this back and this forth that we do all the time because we can't be with our grief 24/7. It's too much. It's too overwhelming. It's exhausting. It's physically exhausting, mentally exhausting. So we have to have breaks from our grief. We have to kind of ebb and flow between it, but we also have to lean into it. Grief is one of these things that we do need to feel and we need to experience because there is such a thing as delayed grief. And one of our authors talks about that, how it took years for her to finally be able to lean into her grief, because grief is one of these things, it will show back up. Maybe when it's facing your own mortality or somebody else that has died, or, another experience in your life, that grief will come back up. And so it's really important to make space for it and to lean into it and feel it.
Okay, you're partially answering this next question, so I kind of want to go a little bit deeper with this. But grief timing gets talked about a lot, and I mostly hear, don't let anyone tell you how long it should take to grieve. I hear this a lot. But Kelly, this is where I want to go deeper with you. I've also known people to have the entire rest of their lives negatively impacted.
Absolutely.
So I want to talk more about your thoughts about that. Like, how do we help them lean in?
Leaning in is just sitting with it. When you feel that grief, when it's appropriate, sit with it, feel it, experience it. Coming to a grief group is so powerful and beneficial, to be able to sit in a room with other people who get it. And you don't have to hold back. Then you don't have to filter what you're thinking. I mean, all the time in my grief group, so someone will be like, this is going to sound crazy, but I experienced this, and then everybody in the room is like, no, I experience that all the time. Right? We have to normalize grief more. Grief is not something our society wants to talk about because it's hard and we don't want to experience it. But you're exactly right. There's people that this becomes their identity, right? They're that bereaved mother, or they're that motherless daughter. That becomes their identity, and they don't know how to really integrate that grief. And I think, the most important thing about grief is, how do you have that healthy adaptation to loss? How do you adapt this grief into your life while still leading a fulfilling, meaningful life? Grief is a part of my story, but it's not who I am. And yes, has it, put me on a path in my life to help people that are grieving? Absolutely. And I truly believe that if my mom hadn't died, I'm not really even sure I would have even became a social worker. So it obviously has propelled me into this career and this field, like so many other grief counselors, but it doesn't have to be who I am. I'm so much more than just my grief. And, there isn't a timetable that we carry. What one of my little girls talks about is, we have a backpack of rocks, and all those rocks make up all of our different parts of our grief. And sometimes we have to let those rocks out and lean into it. But that bag is with us. Sometimes it doesn't feel so heavy, and other times it does. Like when I went through writing for holistic mental health, this is 28 years after my mom died. And boy, that brought up a lot for me. I had read some stuff that I had written as a teenager that I had totally forgotten about. And so going back through that and reliving that, did it bring up some of my grief? Absolutely. But it just is a reminder that grief is something you don't get over, it's something you learn to live with. And although that was difficult and challenging, I'm really glad that I was able to lean into that again, make that space for that. And that actually helped me. It helped me on my healing journey.
I often think of my own writing as taking a few of the rocks out, but also, so which lightens my pack, but it also publishing honors the story also, which is
Mhm.
part of why I get to take the rock out. And
Exactly.
we want to honor our lost stories and the people and the things and these pieces of us
Mhm.
that are lost. And I think it's a cool thing that happens when we create these books together. And so you have a really amazing practice. I know one thing that is crucial to my success on this journey is that awareness and mindset practice. How have you curated your own, and what do you want others to know about that piece?
I'm one of these people that will try anything once. So I'll go to a float tank and I'll try maybe some things that people think is a little woo woo, but I will try it. And if it works, it works. I keep going to it. And I would say for me, over the years, I've been in and out of therapy. I know when I need to get back into therapy when something comes up, and I'm okay with that. I believe the best therapist has their own therapist. And so when I, feel that need, I go back into therapy and I work through some of that. And over the years, I've done journaling, meditation is a big practice of mine. And about 4 years ago, I discovered breath work. A very active breath work, and found an amazing breath work teacher. And that has probably been one of the most transformative practices that I've engaged in, to help myself heal. I've had actually after death communications with my mom during breathwork sessions, but it also is this tool that I can let go of some of the stuff that I hold on to. I mean, I hold a lot of space all day long for clients. And it's important to also be able to take care of myself, because if I'm not taking care of myself, I can't take care of my clients.
And I believe therapists need radical self-care and like
Mhm.
other level kinds of self-care. You dedicated your life to helping other people, holding that container in that space energetically for people to do that
Mhm.
work. So, and by the way, you had me at float tank. Okay. So, and I don't think that's woo at all. Like, oh my gosh, you guys, the float tank, like you need to Google this right now. Okay.
They're so
Um,
awesome.
they are they provide this very unique meditation space, so I think it brings you deeper. So yeah, like we could talk about the float tank all day long. And such powerful modalities. Breath work, yes, ditto, same, same powerful experiences that I've had too. So there's ways to clear your energy, there's ways to shift your energy, there's ways to shift it in a way that you feel good and you feel like you're on that healing path, right? um
Absolutely.
Super quick, well, not super quick, it doesn't have to be quick at all. I want to say a very deep thank you, so much gratitude to your co-authors, to your cast of experts who said yes to this project. You guys, you took this book to other levels of vulnerability, which in my book is strength. You took it to a level of share that is world changing, healing work. And so my gratitude is huge. Kelly, what do you want to say to your co authors?
I'll try not to get too emotional.
I know this one is rough. I know.
It is. That morning when we got the first copy back, and I'd only read probably about 5 of the stories before that, and I just sat there and I cried through every one of their stories, and they were so vulnerable and brave and told stories that need to be heard, and I truly believe, which was what my goal was, is that whoever picks up that book is going to be able to relate to at least one of them, and probably more than one of them. And I just couldn't be more proud of what we've created, and proud of them for, so many of them are therapists. And so as therapists, we don't always disclose a whole lot to the world, right? We're there for our clients, and they're putting it out there and showing, how grief has impacted them, how grief has impacted their practice. And I'm thrilled. I'm so grateful to all of them. I am grateful for the connections that I've formed with them through these several months. I mean, I recruited them all about a year ago, over a year ago. So this has been quite a process. And I'm so proud of them. I can't thank them enough. And it's just such a beautiful book.
Yeah,
And
ditto.
I love them all. I'm so grateful for all of them.
Y'all are shifting and disrupting the paradigm for therapists in general. You're really taking this to, I don't know, I feel like I'm repeating myself, another level for all therapists. And I don't know, I so honor you all for being here. So thank you for saying yes and for being a part of this and really grabbing hands with Kelly and I and doing this together. So Kelly, you have a lot going on aside from this book project. Tell everyone, how people work with you and what you have going on aside from the book.
Yeah, so I actually have a couple of different businesses. So my Greater Life Grief Counseling is my individual and group counseling practice where I'm able to work with individuals in New York, Florida, and South Carolina. And my grief groups are my passion. It is my favorite part of my practice. And from that has come out what's called Healing Strides, which is now an LLC as well. And Healing Strides is a 2 hour grief group for women. And the first hour is a traditional grief group. And then the second hour, we go outside and we train for a 5K race. And one of the co authors, Lisa Millis, shares a little bit about that practice because she's our coach for Healing Strides. We met at a grief camp, I think in 2010, and since then have started this program which is life changing. It is now we are currently doing research on it to show the benefits of this program, and to see those women cross that finish line is it's I can't describe that feeling. It's unbelievable. And so we're starting that up in a couple of months and we offer that twice a year. And then on top of that is Center for Informed Grief. And really, with my passion with that is to help therapists and school personnel become more grief informed because grief, as as much as it happens, isn't always taught in undergraduate and graduate programs. About 60% of therapists have not had any training in school, in undergrad or graduate, on grief and loss, which is mind blowing to me because every client experiences grief. It may not be due to death, but you need to be able to support someone on their grief journey, whatever that looks like. And so my goal really is to get out there and make therapists and make school personnel more grief informed because as I talk about in the introduction of the book, I didn't have the best experience at my school. And I had some things that happened that shouldn't have happened, in my opinion. And so my goal really is to do education and trainings. I have a Facebook group called Supporting Grieving Students and Children, and really want to help these people become more grief informed and more confident in working with grieving children and not afraid of it. I hear all the time, oh, I can't do that work. Yes, you can. You just need to feel more confident about it. You just don't have the resources and the tools. And so I'm really excited to be doing some trainings this year to be able to get more people grief informed.
Yeah, you guys, grief you may be experiencing the feelings inside after the loss of a job, after a divorce. And, death is what we all think about, but there are so many moments in life that we have to grieve. And so, wow, it is mind-blowing hearing you say that about the education piece because you'd think that would be kind of a no-brainer. So,
Exactly.
yeah, I'm excited about moving this book, The Grief Experience, out into the world. We're going to cover it all, you guys. Kelly, for listeners who are on this journey, maybe just on the journey, maybe just kind of dipping a toe in the pool of dealing and coping, what do you want to share for those people who are kind of starting out? Last words.
I think it's about having some education about grief and loss and understanding whatever you're feeling is probably normal and natural. Grief brain is a real thing, which people don't understand that your brain has a hard time focusing. Memory issues is extremely normal. Concentration is difficult. Sleeping issues. Grief is not just emotional or mental, it is very physical. Jaw pain, headaches, stomach aches, back pain is very common. It's also spiritual. questioning why this had to happen, these why questions that unfortunately a lot of them don't have answers for, right? But because grief is so difficult, it's exhausting, physically exhausting, mentally exhausting. People don't realize how exhausting it is until you experience it. But it is about creating space and time, coming up with good self-care for yourself, leaning into your grief, finding people that you can talk to about your grief. Just because you're good at maybe being there for someone else, not everybody is good with this topic. So it's about finding the right people in your circle that are good listeners, that aren't going to tell you what you should or shouldn't be feeling. And if you need to, seek out support from a therapist or a grief group, because they really can be quite beneficial in helping you understand what you're feeling is normal and natural, and also helping you realize that this doesn't have to become your identity. How can you adapt this and form an enduring connection, especially if it's with bereavement with the deceased, while embarking on a new life?
I thank you for helping me move back into my body about grief. I want to back, I'm backing up just a little bit because I thought that was really important. So remember, it's also physical.
Hmm.
And sometimes, we want to listen to the whispers before they become screams in your body. And a lot of that can manifest that way, you guys. So I'm really, really glad that you brought that up. Um, and healing strides, I feel like that should be everywhere in the country. We
Well,
need to
that's the
like,
goal. That's the goal.
yeah, the runners group. Oh my gosh, that just, I don't know. I'm going back to that too because I'm excited about that program for you. I think that's phenomenal. Kelly, thank
Yep.
you so much for what you do in the world and for being here today to share it with everyone. Thank you for heading up this beautiful book.
Well, thank you, Laura, for all that you're doing for us to make this book possible and to getting it out to the world, because I am beyond grateful for your help and your support and your encouragement.
You are so welcome. You guys, this is way more than a book. So, to kind of close out today, remember this is a generous community led by Kelly. Drop down into the show notes. If something that we talked about today is making you buzz, giving you the goosebumps, maybe you have a question or you just want to continue the conversation or get some of those resources, right? So I have Kelly hooked up with her website. The book will be there when it's live and ready for you to purchase. So get ready for that. Remember, you can join us for the book launch party. That's going to be on February 9th. And it's at 10 a.m. Eastern. Info is down below about that as well. You can join all of the authors. We're going to be dropping some wisdom and inspiration for you at the party. And again, if you're listening after that date, well, that just means the book is ready on Amazon. So I hope that you'll grab your copy. And lastly, today, everyone, remember your words change the world when you're brave enough to share them. So it is time to be brave. See you next time, everyone.